Are you doing hours backtesting but not any forward testing? Then you are an idiot. But don't worry, I have been there too. Walk forward testing is the antidote you need to avoid overly optimizing your backtest and making the best use of the available historical data. It's widely recognized as the best method for backtesting and optimization. Today I'm going to go through several ways to test and evaluate your algos. I will go through the different advantages and disadvantages of the different methods, and I will end with a practical example of my preferred method, which is the walk forward testing. There are no perfect methods, but there are definitely methods to avoid. So throughout this video I will use testing and optimization as synonyms. So those words mean the same in the rest of this video. So how do you know if a strategy will make you money? Well, you have to test it, right? And the easiest but also the most expensive way to do this is just to start the strategy right away with real money. You're actually not testing it on any historical data at all. Instead, you just test it live and see what happens. So let me visualize this in a calendar. So if you're starting the algo today, here in 2023, then all your data is out of sample data because it's all in the future. There's no way to overly optimize the strategy with this method because you never actually optimize it. And that's the good thing about this method. If it works, it works. But chances are good that it won't, and it will cost you quite many failing strategies before you find someone that actually works. And the truth is that this is what most people do, what all manual traders do from start. Backtesting a strategy, which you all know, requires that initial effort to get over the threshold of coding, finding a suitable software, and so on. So people just start trading right away, throwing their money on a strategy they won't know actually work. Often it's even worse than that. Many traders don't even define their strategy or the conditions of the strategy. So even if they would eventually find themselves having made steady profits over a longer period of time, they would have trouble replicating it. So I think this is pretty fascinating that people just throw their hard-earned money on something they have no idea works. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for taking big risks, but I mean, this method is just a coin toss. So, does this method work? Well, it can work, but it will probably just be a very expensive lesson. The next method is simple testing or simple optimization, where you test your strategy on historical data, and more specifically, you are optimizing your strategy on all the historical data that you have access to. You could also do this without doing any optimization whatsoever, just running the strategy to see whether the strategy have worked historically or not. But most people tend to want to make adjustments to their filters, their stop losses, and whatever else to improve the historical performance of that algo. From that point, one can consider the strategy optimized for the historical data. So if we look at the calendar again, in the case of simple optimization, all cells marked in blue here are considered in sample data, as that is the period you optimized your different variables on. In this example, the in-sample data period is from 2014 to 2023. So you optimize your different filters, stop losses, etc. for that 8-year period, and then after that you decide if you want to start the algo. These green cells here are your out-of-sample period because that is the results of the strategy after you have developed it. So the key terms to remember here are in-sample and out-of-sample. So in-sample refers to the data used to optimize and test your trading rules, while the out-of-sample data is unknown to the system until the system is running. So in-sample results are optimistic, but out-of-sample results are more representative of the real-world results. Method 3 is commonly referred to as out-of-sample testing. This involves testing a strategy with X% of the data and confirming it works with the remaining Y%. In this example, we have optimized the strategy over the data from 2014 to 2021 and then tested those parameters on 2022 and 2023. So this means that your in-sample period is 8 years and your out-of-sample period is 2 years. In other words, that's your in-sample period is 80% of the available historical data and your out-of-sample period is 20% of the available historical data. So you take whatever parameter values that were best for that in-sample period and you use those same values for 2022 and 2023. Now, this is a better method than the previous two as it provides more out-of-sample data, giving you a better representation of the real-world performance. Again, out-of-sample data tend to reflect quality a lot better than in-sample data, so this is a common method that I would say most developers use. What we do is taking this one step further. The last approach and the method that everyone should be using is called walk-forward testing or walk-forward optimization. This method is the antidote I was talking about. This is what the ProRealAlgos are using. This step-by-step method involves optimizing over a period such as 2014 to 2018, then applying the best results of that period onto the next unseen period, which is 2019. This process is repeated, shifting the window each year until the present day. So in the next iteration, I am optimizing my variables for an in-sample period from 2015 to 2019. And then I use those best variable values for 2020. So I just continue this and repeat this until I get to the present day. What you get from doing all this is all these green periods, which is your out of sample data. So this method results in a lot of out of sample data, making it a very valuable tool for evaluating strategies. So those are the 4 methods. Let's run them through quickly and see what the pros and cons are, and then I will do a walk-forward testing in ProRealTime. All right, let's start by looking at the complexity. How much time, work, and effort does each and every one of these methods take? Let's start with real money testing live. The effort to develop an algo with this method is none or very, very small. If we go to simple optimization, the effort is bigger, but it's still quite small. You are optimizing your algo on the whole historical data period that you have access to. So the effort is quite small. So out-of-sample testing requires a little bit more effort. You are defining an in-sample period, and then you're defining an out-of-sample period, and you are evaluating your algo on the out-of-sample period, which means that it's a little bit more effort than the simple optimization. So what about walk-forward testing? Well, that requires a bit more effort. You could actually multiply the effort that out-of-sample testing requires with the number of iterations of your walk-forward test, and that is the amount of effort that a manual walk-forward test will take. So if you would do, let's say, 5 iterations, that is actually 5 times running the out-of-sample testing. But what's good for us is that most training software today have the automatic walk-forward testing module. So that saves a lot of time. So now let's look at the reliability, meaning can I trust the results of the different methods? Real money testing live is actually running the algo live, meaning that all the results you get are real. So for simple optimization, you don't have any out-of-sample period at all. And one thing is for sure, your algo will not perform as good as the backtest. So out-of-sample testing is better. It's more reliable since you have a out-of-sample period, but you're still using the majority of your available historical data as your in-sample period. So walk-forward testing provides us with a much longer out-of-sample data period. That makes this method the most reliable one. All right, let's proceed on the topic, the length of the out-of-sample data. For real testing money live, you have no out-of-sample data, For simple optimization, you have no auto-sample data. So the auto-sample period for auto-sample testing is, of course, depending on how long your in-sample data period is. Most people use somewhere around 80% in-sample period and 20% auto-sample period. And with walk-forward testing, you are getting the longest possible auto-sample period. So what are the chances that the algo will perform live? Well, for real money testing live, it's not even applicable because the results you are getting from the algo is the results you will be getting from the algo. So with simple optimization, you have optimized your algo on all the historical data. You will have a beautiful looking backtest, you will have a beautiful looking win rate, a beautiful looking profit factor, and the chance that it will perform this good live is 0. With auto-sample testing, you're at least getting some auto-sample data period. The auto-sample data results you're getting from this method could be similar to the results that you will get live. With walk-forward testing, you're getting a longer auto-sample data period, meaning that the chances that it will perform similar to that auto-sample period is pretty high. All right, now I'm going to do the walk-forward optimization in ProRealTime. If you're new to the walk-forward concept, I would recommend that you do this manual exercise with me first. So I'm going to do it manually first, and then I'm going to use the automatic module in ProRealTime. The strategy that I'm going to use is on the DAX 40 market. It's a long-only strategy. The two variables I will optimize is the RSI 14 value. So I will enter the long trade when the RSI 14 is below the value X. X is the variable that we will optimize, and I will exit the strategy after Y days. So Y is the second variable that I will optimize. All right, so here's the code. Here's my X variable and here's my Y variable. Let's go optimize them. For you who isn't familiar with the optimization interface of ProRealTime, I covered that in a video a couple of months back. So go watch that and then come back here. All right, so the X variable, I want to enter a trade if the RSI 14 value is somewhere between 5 and 95. I will do a step size of 5. And I want to exit the trade somewhere between 1 to 30 days. I will use a step size of 1. So in this first iteration, I'm using a 7-year in-sample period from the start of 2014 until the end of 2020. All right, let's run the optimization of the first iteration. Right, so you can see that there are approximately 30 values that have the same gain, but I'm just going for the sake of it, always use the variable values that are in the top. And the one that earned most money in this in-sample period had a X value of 55 and a Y value of 1. And now I'm going to use those values in my auto-sample period, which is 2021. Right, so the results of this period was a gain of 2,514 euros. Let's add that to the document, plus 2514. And now let's continue with the second iteration, which is an in-sample period of 2015 until 2021. The best values for this in-sample period of the second iteration is 75 and 1. Let's run that on the auto-sample period, which is 2022. The result of this auto sample period was a loss of 2,722 euros. Let's add that to the document. And the third and final iteration is a in-sample period from 2016 until 2022. And the best values for the in-sample period of the third iteration is x equals to 55 and y equals to 1. So that's the same as the first iteration. Now let's run that on the auto sample period, which is 2023. So we don't have a full year of 2023, so the auto sample period for the third iteration will be quite small. And the results of this auto sample period is a gain of 293 euros. All right, our walk forward optimization is done. The total auto sample results was a gain of 85 euros. It's not a system that I would run. So even though I just did 3 iterations, this took quite a lot of time. So fortunately enough, ProRealTime have this automatic walk forward optimization module, and that is what I'm going to show you next. So the logic is the same, but you don't have to run each iteration by itself. So to run a walk forward optimization in ProRealTime, go into the optimization window, click active down here, and here are 4 settings that you need to know. The first one is period type. Not anchored versus anchored. What's the difference? Well, it's pretty simple, and you can also see it in the chart here to the right. If you run an anchored walk forward optimization, your in-sample data period will always start at the start of your historical data period. As your in-sample date moves forward, the in-sample period will become longer and longer for each iteration. If you are using a non-anchored walk forward optimization, your in-sample period will always be the same length no matter which iteration. So the first field here is the number of iterations. So in ProRealTime you can run anything between 2 iterations or up to 20 iterations. In this example, we want to do the same number of iterations that we did when doing the manual walk forward testing, which was 3. The next field here is how long your in-sample data period will be. If I change this to 50, naturally the auto sample period will also become 50. If I change this to 70%, the auto sample data period will be 30%. So in our previous example, we used an in-sample data period of 7 years and an auto sample data period of 1 year. So that's approximately 87% in-sample period and 13% auto sample period. And that is for each iteration. All right, so now the walk forward configuration is done. Now let's set the time period. When running an automatic walk forward optimization, you don't have to change the time period as we did when doing the manual walk forward optimization. You just set a time period which is equivalent of the whole available data period. So just as we did in the manual example, our start date will be the 1st of January and the end date will be today. Also, I forgot one thing. Remember to activate the optimization of these 2 variables again. All right, let's run it. In the manual walk forward optimization, we used a little distorted out of sample period in the last iteration. That means that we will not get this exact same results in this walk forward optimization, but just trust me, if we were to run this manually with the same in sample period and the same out of sample period with the same number of repetitions or iterations, we would get the same results. So when the optimization are finished, a new tab will appear in the detailed report called Walk Forward Statistics. So here are the 3 iterations and their in-sample periods and their out-of-sample periods. As you can see here, the in-sample period doesn't really align with the yearly break as we did in the manual test. You can see the gain of the in-sample period compared to the gain of the out-of-sample period. And you can hover over this variable icon here to see the variable values for that specific iteration. So the in-sample length in this example is 7 times bigger than the out-of-sample length. And to put those numbers into perspective, there is a new column here called annualized performance. So this column shows the in-sample results divided into only 1 year, and it's showing the out-of-sample results stretched or divided into 1 year, so that you can put those periods into relations to one another. So this walk forward efficiency column is showing you the relative results of your out-of-sample period compared to your in-sample period. So in this example, 461 euros is approximately 66% of 693 euros. So what's a good walk forward results? Well, it depends on a number of factors. The first one is the number of iterations. If we were to run, let's say, 3 iterations, and one of these iterations have a negative out-of-sample data period, just like the 3rd iteration in this example, then I would just toss that system goodbye because it's not performing. But if we were to run, let's say, 20 iterations and one of those iterations have a negative out-of-sample data period, that reason alone would not be sufficient to toss that algo out. So you would also have to consider how long your in-sample period is compared to your out-of-sample period. So there are no definitive answers for this. It's heavily dependent on the type of algo, the number of iterations, and the configuration of your periods. All right, now you know how to not be an idiot anymore. Now you know everything you need to make your own walk-forward testing in ProRealTime. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. There are new videos coming up soon on how to develop robust algos in ProRealTime. All right, see you soon. Bye.